What's up, my Madden Rebuild Warriors? My name is David. This is Franchise Revival, and today we're talking about the top three teams I can't wait to rebuild with in Madden 26. And we don't have to wait till Madden 26. We can do that now in Madden 25, but we'll get into how you do that later in another video. Today, I realized how hard this list was to make. There was a bunch of teams I considered. I had a fight in my mind between which team was going to be number one and which team was going to be number two, and then that number three pick, there was like 5 or 6 teams I had consideration, and it was just a lot of back and forth in my mind. I didn't realize it was gonna be this hard to come up with my top three list. And some might be chalk, some might not, but I'll let you guys be the judge. You tell me what you thought of my list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And whether or not you agree or not, let me know in the comments when this is over what your top three teams are that you can't wait to rebuild with. So, without further ado, let's get into it. My top three teams I can't wait to rebuild with in Madden 26. So, one of the teams I considered on this list as my number three top three team I want to rebuild in Madden 26 is the Los Angeles Rams. And a big part of that is you got the first round pick from Atlanta. So, anytime you have a team with 2 first rounds in the upcoming draft, that really makes it interesting to consider. They don't have, any double seconds or thirds or fourths, but you can do a lot with that 2 firsts and including trading up to get your quarterback. And that's kind of their one problem that they have. Matthew Stafford's old. Now, in real life, this team scares the shit out of me as an Eagles fan in 2025, 2026. It's a really good upcoming team, I think. They got a lot of young players that are mixed in with a couple of really good veterans. They brought in Devontae Adams, but Puka's really good, and it's just, they're going to be feeding Puka like crazy. It's all going to be whether or not he stays healthy. Because other than that, I don't generally love their wide receiving core. I know there was a lot of buzz around Jordan Whittington last year as like a Puka clone, kind of, especially in the fantasy world. So maybe he takes a step forward. Who knows? But this team, of all the teams the Eagles played in the playoffs last year, the defense especially was not backing down. They got a tight end of the future. You got a running back already and a wide receiver, so you just kind of got to build around them. And then I think some of the offensive line needs help over the years. You can kind of get by for a couple years. Havenstein's probably going to be out. But their defense, I think, is really going to take a big step forward. You should see, by the end of the season next year, a lot of these players, I think, take a huge step forward, especially Jared Verse. He's going to be one of the most premier pass rushers in the league. I really like Chris Paul. He's one of the best tacklers in the draft. Josiah Stewart. Their corners definitely need work. Cameron Kitchens, interesting player. Cameron Curl, Quentin Lake, who I believe is their slot corner. But it's an interesting team. But yeah, the draft picks is really what has me interested in rebuilding them. And I just think they're going to be a really good team in this upcoming season. So they were on my short list of teams to consider, but I just didn't go with them as my number 3. All right, so next up, a team I consider. This is more from a defensive perspective of rebuilding. I think it's really interesting what they did in the draft. You can say what you want, listen to whatever draft experts you want about how good of the pass rushers they took, but that's a really interesting thing to consider. So I hate that they lost their first. That's really dumb, but I think their team rating's a little inflated. They got weapons. You got Bijan already. He's 23 and 92 overall. He's going to be there for the entire rebuild. You could probably build up Michael Penix pretty good, even though he's already 25. You got Drake London. You got Kyle Pitts, who's still 24 and an 84 overall player. Their offensive line is going to need some work. You got Rook already there. You can move him around on your defensive line, add to that. But Jalen Walker, who I think I put superstar on them when I edited my draft that I used here, because they're drafted in the first round, and it's not about them being superstars. It's just about how quickly they need to develop. And I mean, you're drafted in the first round. You're expected to progress faster, I guess. But I think they got a lot of upside, and having a 3-4 defense with two outside linebackers that are 90 speed, 90 plus acceleration. Uh, Real interesting defense. So I would, I'm not the biggest defensive minded person, but if you want to start building defense, this is where I want to start. Pass rushers are always at a premium. They got two of them. They're trying to fix an issue. We'll see how it works out. But they also have these young safeties. You got Billy Bowman Jr., who's fast, and Xavier Watts, who is also fast, even though he's 23 and then he's 22. Still really good. You move those guys around, build them up. You got Jesse Bates, who's someone you could probably trade off to get back some picks. I mean, how you can even try and trade off Michael Penix Jr. Build him up a little bit. But one of the reasons why I didn't have him higher is that they're missing their first. I hated that trade. But defensively, it's a team I want to consider, and they're probably not going. I don't know what they're going to be next year. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with those outside linebackers, if they're going to make a real difference. Depending who you talk to, it's quite a gamble. But from a Madden's perspective, having 290 speed and acceleration outside linebackers in a 3-4 defense with some young, fast safeties and a really good, corner there in AJ Terrell, you got a team, man. You got a team here, and even Clark Phillips third is pretty decent. So, and then my boy Kobe Bryant, different Kobe, bunch of Kobe Bryants, some alive, some not. Another team I considered is my favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles, and as you say, I mean, the team's too good. They're like the second highest rated team going into Madden 26, right? Why is that interesting? I think managing their cap makes it hard. Any of these really good teams, their cap becomes a problem, which you have to navigate. You're gonna have to replace Barkley soon, because I'm assuming they still have regression. But one of the things that makes them really interesting is they got a first, a second, 2/3, a fourth. I think they have more picks than this, but they got a lot of picks, especially when you start getting multiple thirds or fourths, or seconds, or whatever. So they're a really good team with a lot of draft capital in this upcoming draft, which is pretty good. And their defense is now taking a step back a little bit as far as overall goes. You got young players. All their money is into their offense, especially their offensive line and their starters. So you got to build a defense that's cheap through the draft. And that's what they did. And that's what they're doing. I mean, they got, and bringing in guys like Azeez Ojulari, who a lot of people think is a not premier, but a really sneaky pass rusher for cheap. He was 25 and really only a 74 overall, but people you talk, who knows? But the young team, pretty much, except for Zach Ball, except for you got Jahad Campbell and Dean, who you could trade off. You got Trotter and Mondon, so they got some really interesting middle linebackers, off-ball linebackers. Nolan Smith's ascending. You can get rid of Bryce Huff in that deal, but you have some money issues. You're gonna have to sign Jordan Davis. It's gonna cost a lot of money. Ty Robbins is a real interesting player. Jalen Carter's gonna need money, so it's more managing the cap. And yes, when you get drafted, to stat on you, I will put a superstar on you. He's only a 69 overall player, but Cameron Williams probably would have went higher if you listen to a lot of draft experts. He would have been higher. He's going to sit a year or two, and he's going to be a replacement for Lane Johnson. Or if it's not him, it's going to be Miles Hinton, who's another huge player. Only 66 overall, but I put superstar on him because he will develop. He needs to develop. And he'll lose the superstar. Both these guys will lose the superstar by the end of the season, but you just want them to get that little jump. So call me biased, but you get a boost for being with one of the best offensive line coaches ever. You know, you got to find a new tight end. Get rid of Dallas Goddard. Brown's going to be aging out. Got to replace him. So there's some things to manage, but one of the things that interests me is my favorite team, and for a team as good as they are, just they got draft capital. It's what Howie does. But not my number 3 overall team to rebuild. All right, now's where we start really splitting hairs of teams I considered putting in my top 3 of rebuilding, and this is one of the teams right on the edge. The Houston Texans, 84 across the board right now as far as rating. And just like the Eagles, they're a pretty good team. They're not as highly rated, but they got some pieces that remind you of the Eagles. But as good as they should be, they got some draft capital. They moved off some players. They got a first round pick, a second, but they got 2 3s and 2 4s, and that's pretty much it. You got the quarterback of the future there. He's young, superstar, 88 overall. Going to need to address running back at some point. That's not that big of a deal. I mean, they got wide receivers today for days. So you got players you can trade off, you can keep. If there's a way to get 4 wide receivers on a field with a playbook next year, that'd be awesome. Hopefully we get some customization over that. But Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins are some really intriguing draft prospects that a lot of draft guys have identified. And I mean, Jaden Higgins is what some people call like the Nico Collins clone a little bit. You got a really interesting Jalen Noel, who can be a really good slot guy. He's definitely going to hold down the fort until Tank Dell comes back. You can move on from Dell and go with Noel. So you got some trade pieces there. Tight end is whatever. I don't, if you're worried about this team, or you're using this team, not worried about this team, but you're more worried about having 3 wide receivers that are producing on the field. So, tight ends just there to block. I mean, Ursary can improve. He's a piece there. You got to focus on the your lines a little bit on both sides of the ball, minus Will Anderson. But yeah, I would definitely, got to replace Daniil Hunter and the D line, linebackers, whatever. They need to eventually be replaced. But your secondary is pretty much set. Stingley, Lassiter, Petrie, who's their slot, Bullock, safety. You still got CJ, GJ, and Jimmy Ward. Just a nice veteran backup. So this is a really solid team I considered, and I'm really intrigued by the wide receiver group. And I mean, who doesn't love wide receivers? So I mean, Kirk's probably gone after this year, and Tank Dell. What are they gonna do with him? Nico Collins. But you got the replacements right there, so you can always move on and do some interesting stuff. All right, so these next 2 were probably the hardest for me to go through and decide which I wanted to sneak into the top 3. But right on the cusp here is the New York Jets, and I'll show you exactly why I like them. What has me intrigued? Their offensive line is young and ready to go. You can definitely trade off Josh Simpson. That's just someone you have to replace with another young player. But Tittman, he's young and an 81 overall. Elijah Vera Tucker, he's young enough. He'll be here for a long time. Membu, great player. So your offensive line is set. You ain't got to worry about that. And as someone that kind of is like OCD about certain positions, like, it's just nice having a position set, and you ain't got to worry about that. The 2 factors that do hurt them are the quarterback's age. I do think you can, if you use the right playbook, you can build up Justin Fields pretty quickly. Use his speed, get him in a run-heavy playbook. You got the offensive line for it. That'll help build up the offensive line. That should help build up and use Justin Fields correctly. Also get Breece Hall going. You got a bunch of running backs, and you could probably move on from one. You got at least one premier wide receiver who's really good, and you got a nice young tight end here in Mason Taylor, who is really good and very underrated, and a piece to build up. And then you can just work on your defense, especially on the defensive line, getting younger there, getting better there. Quentin Williams will be here for a bunch of years still. These guys should be playing into their 30s. These defensive lineman players. Um, but you got Sauce Gardner and a really interesting project in Thomas here. He should probably be a little bit higher rated. He's gonna be pretty much a pretty good player. Work on your safety. Malachi Moore might be a nice surprise here. He's got speed. It sucks that he's 23. You wish he'd be maybe a little bit higher of an overall if he's going to be 23 coming into the league. There seems like there's a lot of 23-year-olds coming in. I guess that's a lot to do with the money they're making now in the NFL. But a negative also is that they're missing their third. I don't like that. They don't have the draft capital you wish they would. So just didn't make it. It's a really interesting team. I'm really going to consider them. I love having their offensive line like that. They're set up to run the ball and play defense. And that's the kind of coach they have. So I definitely see them, being a really tough out this upcoming season and a team no one wants to play. And I think, 7+ wins should be on their docket. Maybe a fringe playoff team pushing at the end. But I think they kind of come together towards the end of the season, and they're just going to be a tough team you do not want to mess with. All right, so number 3 is the Cleveland Browns. They're like the perfect, and I know it's chalk. I know a lot of people are already starting their rebuilds, doing the Cleveland Browns this year. Like that's one of the first teams like these rebuild channels do. They grabbed the Cleveland Browns, 80 overall team, 79 on offense, 83 on defense. I mean, how could you not like them? And one of the reasons why is they have 2 first-round picks next year, and that second first-round pick they got from the Jags is that could be a good one. So you could have 2 picks in the top 10, 15 possibly of the draft next year. They still have 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and a bunch of 6th. You already have your quarterback of the future in George Sanders. He went where he went. It is what it is. But I mean, you got a great one there to rebuild as far as Madden goes. You got Quinshon Judkins. He's a really good player. I mean, he would have been probably one of the top running backs had not been for this year that he went. You need to work on wide receivers, but wide receivers grow on trees, especially in Madden drafts. You can trade off Njoku and start building Harold Fannin, or just make him a slot weapon. Need some help on the interior of the offensive line. Actually, just all over the offensive line. You need to get better there. You have one of the best defenders ever in Myles Garrett. And add to the other side of him, and then you got 2 young players you can build up in the middle on your defensive line, and Mason Graham. So, one draft, you can have one of the best, probably, defensive lines in all of Madden. Linebackers, they are what they are, but you can find them later in the drafts, building them up. Secondary's fine. It's usable. So it's a really good team to start with, and having that extra first really makes things valuable. And they're not a high overall team. You got some good pieces to start with, not a high overall team. Those are the teams that usually when you see candidates for rebuilds, you don't want to rebuild the Eagles, even though I put the Eagles on here. You don't want to rebuild the Eagles or the Ravens. They're just good teams. You want to start from the bottom and see how long it takes, or how quickly it takes you to get them to the top. So the Browns, they just edged out the Jets for me because of those draft picks and having some young players at key positions already. And then number 2, and they were a strong possibility to be number 1, are the Jacksonville Jaguars. 80s across the board right now as far as things go. And this is another popular chalky pick for teams to rebuild, but I absolutely love them. Now, draft pick wise, they suck because they got rid of that first, but they got a generational player, and we'll talk about him in a second. But Trevor Lawrence is still young enough that you can fix him, so your quarterback problem is fine. You can trade off ETN because he's coming up on a contract, and they got one Bashaw Tootin. You know how much I love him. You got speed here. That's a really interesting player. You can pair with Tank Bigsby as your power back. Wide receiver wise, you got Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. And the great part about that is that you have a freak wide receiver, and I'm almost certain this will happen. You'll be able to have him at both positions next year. Some people say there's a way to have him at both positions this year without creating a second player. I don't know if that's true. I see different results, but you got a freak corner and a freak wide receiver. I mean, just these two players alone, you want to do this rebuild with. So you got speed and size at running back, wide receiver, tight end. It is what it is, but Brenton Strange, it's fine enough. Offensive line is, not offensive, but it's all right. Wyatt Milam's an interesting player. You probably build him up. I know Anton Harrison isn't greatly higher, a great higher overall, but 23, 73 overall. He should kind of build up a little bit. Plus, you got Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen's Hines. Great DNs there. Mason Smith and Jefferson, they might build up okay. Defense isn't the strong suit here. Some players you can trade off that are getting older, maybe. Focus on offense. Ransaw is also real interesting here. And that's someone I would want to get on the field immediately. So you want that speed out there. A lot of speed from these draft picks. And I like it. So it sucks they don't have that first round pick. And that kind of, took them down for me. They do have 2 3s, which helps a little bit. But, having Travis Hunter at corner and wide receiver, amazing. And Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas Jr. just give me that all day long. And a lot of outside runs with Bashaw Tootin. And you should see Trevor Lawrence shoot right up the boards as far as overall goes. So a really interesting team. They're not the great overall team. And they got some weapons though. So that's definitely an offense I want to take over. And the number 1 team I can't wait to rebuild in Madden 26 next year, the Las Vegas Raiders, not the Carolina Panthers, although they were a team I considered, given who they drafted in the first round, but the Vegas Raiders, baby. They are back to being the Vegas Raiders, in my opinion. If you know old Raiders, where they just drafted speed, I mean, they got some really dynamic players. One of the things I don't like is they have Geno Smith. I absolutely hate that, but you can address that one way or the other. Having Ashton Jeanty, who I bumped up on the overall. I think in Madden, these rookie running backs take a minute to kind of develop, and Ashton Jeanty is supposed to be a blue chip generational player type of guy in this draft. There's a reason why he was taken as high as he was, and in Madden, you need to have an overall that reflects that, so he actually does something at the beginning of his career. And he is a superstar X Factor, at least 85 overall. It is what it is. I try to give him an 85 overall. He went up to an 87. But you got the running back. You have a generational running back in the building. And then you have some really dynamic weapons I'm going to talk about. Trey Tucker's cool. He's a nice slot guy, small slot guy maybe. Jack Beck, really underrated player. 6'1", 90 speed, 91 acceleration. 6'1", 214 out of TCU. And then you have Dante Thornton Jr. As far as Madden goes, this is the pick. He's 22 years old, 69 overall, 6'5", 206 with 97 speed, 94 acceleration out of Tennessee. These two are your future. So you got your offense already set. You could trade off Jacoby Myers, get some picks. And then you got Brock Bowers, who's one of the best tight end prospects ever. And you can play him in the slot with, Michael Mayer as your starting tight end and Brock Bowers as your slot. You got interesting young players in Charles Grant. You can build up on your offensive line along with Caleb Rogers. Jackson Powers Johnson is a player that you'll have for a long time in your rebuild. Dylan Parham's okay. DJ Glaze, he should build up nicely. 23-73 overall. He should build up for sure. Plus, you got Max Crosby. So this is almost like having the Browns without the picks. You got one of the best defensive ends in the league. Put some more attention on the defensive line and your set linebackers. They are what they are. And then Darian Porter. Talk about speed, 24 years old, which hurts a little bit, 74 overall, but 96 speed, 94 acceleration, 6'3", 196. That is a freak right there. Add to him, you got to work on your safeties a little bit, but it's all about the offense. And besides quarterback, I don't know a better offense that I would want to start with except for the Jags, and it was it was back and forth of who's going to be number one, and you can't pass up Bowers, Genty, and those two wide receivers, and that's where I'm at. That's my favorite team. I can't wait to do the Raiders. It might be chalk for some people, but there's a reason for that. They're kind of getting back to making good calls in their drafts. Well, not as far as Madden goes, especially getting freaks, getting fast players, and I love what the Raiders did on offense, and I can't wait to rebuild with them in Madden 26. And you should see them get better. They got the coach. They got a coach that believes in running, and they're gonna fucking run the ball for sure. And I'm here for it. So, tell me what you think. What are your top 3 teams you can't wait to rebuild with? Do you agree with the list? Do you agree with my list? Is it too chalky? Give me your thoughts. But definitely tell me your top 3, and we can talk about it in the comments. Also, please like and subscribe. If you found some value in this, you were entertained a little bit, even if it made you angry because I was too chalky or I didn't pick your team. I'm sorry. But thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your rebuilds as we try to fix our teams and get to the promised level. It's been a while since I've done a commentary video. I've been just grinding on getting these depth charts and teams set to as being real as possible, and it took me an entire week. So thank you for your patience, and I will see you very soon for more videos.